I had given birth just 9 days earlier. I could barely walk without pain. My newborn daughter was sleeping in my arms, and I thought buying my dream home meant our hardest days were finally behind us. Then my mother looked me in the eyes and said, "Pack your things and leave. This house belongs to this family now, not just you." She had already invited my sister, her husband, and their 3 children to move in without asking me. They thought I'd cry, surrender, and disappear. I didn't argue. Instead, I made one phone call that changed everything, and by sunset, every single one of them was begging me not to lock the front door. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 30 years old, and 9 days after giving birth to my daughter, Lily, I honestly believed the hardest part of my life was finally behind me. For years, I had worked as an architect, taking every extra project I could find. While my friends traveled, upgraded their cars, or bought expensive things, I quietly put every spare dollar into one account. My dream wasn't luxury. It was stability. I wanted one place where nobody could tell me I didn't belong. Life hadn't been easy. My marriage had ended while I was pregnant, and although the divorce was peaceful, becoming a first-time mother alone was terrifying. Still, every time I looked at Lily, I knew I had made the right decisions. Together, we had a fresh start. 2 weeks before she was born, I signed the papers for a beautiful 3-bedroom house just outside Denver. It wasn't enormous, but it had sunlight pouring through the windows, a small backyard with an old maple tree, and the nursery I had spent months decorating by hand. It was the first thing in my life that belonged completely to me. When my mother called after Lily's birth and offered to stay for a couple of weeks to help, I hesitated. Growing up, my mother had always confused helping with controlling. She organized everyone's lives, made every decision, and somehow managed to make you feel guilty whenever you disagreed. But I was exhausted, recovering from childbirth, and running on almost no sleep. Against my better judgment, I said yes. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. She cooked meals, folded laundry, and insisted I spend more time resting with the baby. I actually started wondering if becoming a grandmother had softened her. Then little things began changing. She rearranged my kitchen because my system made no sense. She moved furniture without asking because it looked better. She even started introducing the house to neighbors as our family home. Each time I corrected her, she laughed it off like I was being overly sensitive. Then, on the morning of the 9th day, while I was feeding Lily in the nursery, my mother walked in wearing a satisfied smile. "Oh, good," she said casually. "Your sister, Daniel, and the kids will be here this weekend. They'll be moving into the upstairs rooms." I blinked, convinced I had misunderstood. Before I could say a single word, she looked directly at me and added with complete confidence, "If you don't like it, Emily, you and the baby can leave." For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. I honestly thought my mother was joking. "This weekend?" I repeated, still holding Lily against my shoulder. "Mom, nobody is moving into my house." She gave me the same patient smile she used when I was a child and supposedly didn't understand how the world worked. "Oh, Emily," she sighed. "Your sister's lease ends on Friday. They need somewhere to stay for a while. Family helps family. My house isn't available." It is now. Those 3 words settled over the room like a storm. I reminded her that I had bought this house with my own savings. Every mortgage payment, every closing cost, every piece of furniture belonged to me. She didn't argue with any of it. Instead, she waved her hand dismissively. "You have 3 bedrooms. Lily doesn't need a nursery this big. Your sister has 3 children. They need the space more than you do." Before I could answer, the front door opened. My sister, Rachel, walked in carrying shopping bags as though she already lived there. Her husband, Daniel, followed with an armful of moving boxes. "Perfect timing," Rachel said cheerfully. "The kids are excited to pick their rooms." I stared at her. "What do you mean, pick their rooms?" She looked confused. "Mom didn't tell you? We're staying here until we get back on our feet." Daniel carried the boxes straight upstairs without asking permission. Nobody waited for my answer. Nobody even pretended this was a discussion. By evening, my dining table had disappeared beneath their belongings. Children's toys covered the living room floor. My carefully organized kitchen cabinets had been rearranged again because Rachel preferred a different system. The next morning, I walked into my garage and found Daniel's truck parked inside while my own car sat outside in the driveway. When I objected, my mother folded her arms. "He's supporting a family. You can walk a little farther." Every sentence made it clearer. This wasn't temporary. They were settling in. That afternoon, I overheard Rachel telling one of her friends on the phone, laughing as she admired the backyard. "We finally found the perfect family home." Family home, not Emily's home. That evening, while taking out the trash, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. My mother was standing beside a locksmith's van. She accepted 2 freshly cut keys, slipped one into her purse, handed the other to Rachel, and smiled. I said nothing. But for the first time, I stopped thinking about how to convince them to leave. I started thinking about how I was going to take my home back. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the nursery with Lily sleeping peacefully against my chest. The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to call every relative I could think of and expose what was happening. Instead, I remembered something my grandfather used to tell me. When someone wants you emotional, stay calm. Calm people make better decisions. So I stopped thinking like a daughter. I started thinking like the legal owner of the property. The following morning, while my mother took Rachel shopping and Daniel drove the children to a nearby park, I made my first phone call. Not to family. To the real estate attorney who had handled my home purchase. After explaining everything, I asked one simple question. "Is there any chance they have a legal right to stay here?" He didn't hesitate. "Emily, whose name is on the deed?" "Mine." "Did anyone else contribute to the purchase?"
"No."
"Did you sign any agreement allowing them to live there?" "Absolutely not." His answer was immediate. "Then this house is yours. They have no ownership interest whatsoever." For the first time in days, I could breathe. He advised me to gather every important document and store digital copies somewhere safe. Before hanging up, he also suggested contacting my home security company to verify that every account, access code, and emergency contact remained under my control. By lunchtime, I had already done it. The security company confirmed I was the only authorized account holder. My attorney emailed copies of my closing documents, title records, and property deed. Everything pointed to one simple fact. Legally, nothing had changed. Emotionally, everything had. Meanwhile, life inside the house grew even stranger. My mother invited neighbors over for coffee and proudly walked them through every room. "This kitchen is perfect for all of us," she said. Rachel nodded enthusiastically. "We're thinking of repainting the upstairs before school starts." I stood only a few feet away, holding Lily, listening as they discussed renovations to a house they didn't own. Neither of them asked how I felt. Neither of them cared. That evening, Daniel measured the living room walls for a larger television while my mother joked that I was too sentimental about furniture placement. I smiled politely. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice, because they still believed exhaustion had made me weak. They had no idea I was quietly putting every piece into place. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed with a text message. "This is Kevin, the locksmith your attorney recommended. New locks are ready. Just tell me when." 2 days later, Lily had her newborn checkup. I welcomed the excuse to leave the house for a few hours. The appointment went well. The pediatrician smiled, told me Lily was healthy, and reminded me that I also needed to take care of myself. I almost laughed at that. Taking care of myself felt impossible, while my own family was slowly erasing me from my home. When I pulled into the driveway that afternoon, something immediately felt wrong. Daniel's truck was parked halfway across the garage entrance. The front door was wide open. I stepped inside carrying Lily's diaper bag and froze. Cardboard boxes were stacked in the hallway. My framed photographs had disappeared from the walls. The living room looked completely different. "Mom," I called. No answer. Then I heard children's voices upstairs. My heart started pounding. I hurried toward the nursery and stopped so suddenly I nearly lost my balance. Lily's crib was gone. The rocking chair where I had spent every night feeding her was missing. The dresser I had assembled myself during my 8th month of pregnancy had been pushed against the wall, covered with someone else's clothes. 3 unfamiliar backpacks sat on the floor. The room no longer belonged to my daughter. Rachel stepped into the doorway carrying folded blankets. "Oh, good," she said casually. "You're back." I stared at her. "What happened to my baby's room?" She shrugged. "The kids needed somewhere bigger to sleep." Before I could answer, my mother appeared behind her. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked pleased. "We moved a few things around," she said. "The basement bedroom is quiet. You and Lily can stay down there." I felt like the air had disappeared from the room. "You moved my newborn out of her nursery?" Mother folded her arms. "Emily, stop making everything so dramatic. Babies don't care where they sleep." I looked around at the room I had spent months preparing while imagining every moment of my daughter's first year. It had been taken from us in one afternoon, without asking, without permission, without a single conversation. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply picked Lily up a little closer against my chest. Then I walked downstairs, grabbed my purse, and headed for the front door. Behind me, my mother called out confidently, "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, unlocked my phone, and opened one message. It was from Kevin. "Ready whenever you are." I typed 2 words. "Do it." Less than 20 minutes later, 3 different vehicles slowly pulled into my driveway. The first vehicle belonged to Kevin, the locksmith. The second carried my attorney, Mr. Lawson. The third was a private security company I had hired that morning after speaking with my lawyer. A few minutes later, a police cruiser arrived as well, not because anyone had committed a crime in that moment, but to prevent the situation from escalating while the property owner exercised her legal rights. I took a slow breath before walking back inside. My mother was still standing in the kitchen. She looked at the people following me and frowned. "What is all this?" I calmly handed my attorney the folder I had been carrying. He stepped forward. "Good afternoon," he said politely. "My client is the sole legal owner of this property. She has asked everyone currently occupying the residence without permission to leave today." For a second, nobody moved. Then Rachel laughed. "Oh, come on. She's seriously doing this?" Daniel folded his arms. "We're family." Mr. Lawson nodded once. "And family members still require the owner's permission to live in someone else's home." My mother took a step toward him. "You can't throw your own mother out." "I am not," I said quietly. "I'm asking everyone who moved into my house without my consent to leave." She turned to me with disbelief. "After everything I'd done for you?" I looked her in the eyes. "You moved my newborn out of her nursery while I was gone." Silence filled the room. The police officer finally spoke. "Ma'am, we've reviewed the ownership documents." He glanced toward me before continuing. "The deed, title, and mortgage are all solely in Ms. Carter's name. She has the legal authority to decide who may remain on the property." My mother looked stunned. She kept waiting for someone to disagree. No one did. Kevin immediately began replacing the front and back door locks. The security technicians disabled every access code, deleted every temporary user, and reprogrammed the alarm system. Garage remotes were deactivated. Digital locks were reset. Within minutes, every copy of the keys my mother had secretly made became completely useless. Rachel's confident smile disappeared. Daniel quietly stopped arguing and began carrying boxes toward his truck. Reality had finally arrived. As suitcase after suitcase was placed on the front lawn, my mother's voice became smaller than I had ever heard it. "Emily." She swallowed hard. "You wouldn't really leave your own family with nowhere to go, would you?" I held Lily a little closer, looked at the home I had worked years to build, and answered with complete calm. "I already gave you a place to stay. You tried to take the entire house." The last of the moving boxes disappeared into Daniel's truck just before sunset. Nobody spoke. The same people who had walked through my front door days earlier with complete confidence now stood quietly on the sidewalk, surrounded by luggage they had never expected to carry back out. The silence felt strangely peaceful. My mother looked around as if someone would suddenly stop all of this and declare it a misunderstanding. No one did. She slowly walked toward me, her shoulders lower than I had ever seen them. Emily, she whispered, we're family. For years, those words would have been enough to make me question myself. Not anymore. I looked down at Lily sleeping peacefully in my arms before meeting my mother's eyes. I spent 10 years saving for this house, I said calmly. I worked overtime. I skipped vacations. I turned down things I wanted because I believed having a safe home for my future family mattered more. She opened her mouth to interrupt, but I continued. Not one mortgage payment came from you. Not $1 of the down payment came from Rachel. Not one piece of furniture was bought by anyone standing here except me. My voice never became louder. It didn't need to. The moment I gave birth, instead of helping me recover, you started making plans to take control of my home. Rachel crossed her arms. We just needed somewhere to stay. I nodded. And if you had asked, we could have had a conversation. I glanced toward the upstairs windows. Instead, you took my daughter's nursery. Neither of them answered. Because they couldn't. The truth was standing all around us. The changed locks. The packed boxes. The signed property documents resting inside my attorney's briefcase. Mr. Lawson stepped forward one final time and handed my mother an envelope. This is a formal notice, he explained politely. You are not authorized to enter this property without the owner's permission. Future unauthorized entry may be treated as trespassing. My mother stared at the paper without unfolding it. For the first time in my life, she had nothing to say. No lecture. No guilt. No excuse. She simply turned, climbed into Rachel's car, and quietly closed the door. I waited until every vehicle had driven away before walking back inside. The house felt different. Not because it was empty, because it was finally peaceful. I carried Lily upstairs, reopened the nursery door, and stood there for a long moment. The room was a mess, but it was still ours. As I gently rocked my daughter against my shoulder, I realized something that had taken me 30 years to understand. Protecting your peace is not an act of selfishness. Sometimes, it's the first act of real love. The weeks that followed were quieter than I ever imagined they could be. The first thing I did was put Lily's nursery back exactly the way I had dreamed it would be before she was born. I hung every picture back on the walls, returned her crib to its place beside the window, and spent one peaceful afternoon rocking her beneath the soft yellow light that had somehow survived all the chaos. I installed new security cameras, changed every password connected to the house, and finally stopped checking over my shoulder every time the doorbell rang. My mother called several times from different numbers. Sometimes she apologized. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she left long messages about family, forgiveness, and second chances. But every voicemail sounded the same. She wasn't grieving the daughter she had hurt. She was grieving the control she had lost. I never called back. Instead, I spent my mornings watching Lily smile a little more each day, knowing she would grow up in a home where love would never be confused with control. Looking back, I realized the greatest thing I protected was never the house itself. It was the life waiting inside it. Some people believe setting boundaries makes you selfish. Becoming a mother taught me the opposite. The safest gift I could ever give my daughter wasn't a beautiful home. It was showing her that real family never demands you surrender your peace to prove your love.